Alright, welcome back to another TouchDesigner tutorial. And in this one we're gonna look at some audio spectrum magic again. So basically we're just converting, as we have done before, from chops to tops. And we're then doing some feedback magic and a lot of post-processing to make this look funky. And I don't know what this kind of style is called, but it kind of reminds me of Vaporwave and sort of early 2000 look, right? And yeah, so really the chop work here is quite minimal. Mostly we're working in tops, and as I said, we're doing a lot of post-processing. So yeah, let's just get started. So as always, I'm just gonna go ahead and delete all of these. So I'm also gonna bypass this. We don't need to listen to the music all the time. So what I've got going here is just an audio file in with a song I've selected from my computer, and to that I have connected an audio device out to be able to listen to the music. So what we have here is a stereo input, so 2 channels, and we want to use a math to just make this one channel. We just want to work with one channel, so I'm going to combine channels average. Alright, then we're going to add an audio spectrum chop, and just change the FFT size to 4096 and go up with the high frequency boost. I'm gonna add a math. I'm just multiply this by 2 just so we're like going up a bit stronger, and I'm gonna add a null and call this spectrum. And then we have already reached the end of the chops, and we're gonna convert this into tops now. Alright, so we have a little strip of the audio spectrum in tops, but it's just like 1 pixel high. We want to work with this, and to be able to nicely work with this, we have to make it a bit higher. So to do that, what we can do is add a resolution top. And on common, I'm going to change it to custom resolution, output aspect resolution, and we just need like a 200 by 20 resolution here. Alright, so that should work nicely. And then I'm going to add a fit to this. And on the fit, we determine the resolution that we're going to be working with in this project. So on my common page here, I'm going to change the resolution to 1500 by 2000. So this is a 3:4 aspect ratio, which I really like recently. You can pretty much work with any resolution, shouldn't be too low, of course. So you can also work in 16:9, but you might just want to look out for the fact that you have to adapt some of the values to the resolution that you're working with. Alright, I'm going to translate this to 0.4 on the y-axis, just so it's nicely positioned at the top, with a bit of a margin to the top. Okay, the thing is, when we're working with the audio spectrum, we, in most cases, especially working with electronic music, and in this case I'm working on a house track, so it's definitely the case. As you can see here, the low ends are a lot brighter than the high ends. So if I were to click Q here again, I just changed the Q point here to 30 seconds, so we're not starting at the beginning. So yeah, I just want to kind of even out the brightness. So to do that, what I can do is just add a ramp from left to right, and I might want to add another handle so I'm a bit more in control here. I can go make this higher, lower, and you'll see in a second why that's important. I'm going to add a level to this, and on my level I'm going to go down with the gamma, and this is a dynamic value that we have to change to adapt it to the song that we're using. Then I'm going to add a channel mix, because I don't want to have a black background. So I'm going to go down with it, but it actually doesn't affect it yet. So I've got to go to common and change my pixel format to 8-bit fixed RGBA. So make sure you're working in the same pixel format, because that's going to be important later on. Alright, so now I'm going to start with the feedback loop, adding a feedback top, a ramp to it, which I'm going to bypass for now, a transform, and we're also going to add a blur to the loop. Then I'm going to add a composite, use my channel mix as a second input, and change the operation to over. I'm going to drag this back onto the feedback and add a keyboard in chop to be able to nicely reset my feedback loop with 1 on my keyboard, right? I'm going to use Alt-N to add a null here, call it BG, and display that in the background. So if you right click anywhere, go to display, I have turned off show network editor grid, so it's nice and clean, and I have turned off backdrop tops. So if I turn this on, you can see that backdrop here, and if I turn this off, it's only going to be here. So I've split my screen here and selected top viewer, and then it's going to show whatever we have selected as our display here, wherever we have turned on the display, so the blue little dot here. Alright, so right now it's not really doing what I wanted to do. Let me just restart it here, so set the, you might see why I want to do a cue point here, so I know there's always like a good beat happening at that time of the song. Right now it's just drawing onto itself, right? So I want to change that. Let's change this translate to pixels, and then go down by -15. So if I press 1 on my keyboard, I'm going to do that a bunch now. To just reset the feedback loop, we can see that's just being dragged down. And now on our ramp, we can see, if I were to bypass the ramp, we can see it's very bright on the left and it gets less and less bright to the right. So that's why I added this ramp, so it's a bit more even. Alright, so now we're nicely sanding that downwards. On my blur, I'm going to change this to 3 and 15. A bit better, like we don't actually want to have that many details here. So I'm actually also going to add another blur afterwards and change the pre-shrink here to 3 as well, and the filter size up to 25. So it kind of looks a bit less than like an audio spectrum, and that's kind of what we're going for. Okay, so I want to cut it off at the bottom here. I don't want it to go off the screen in this case. So that's why I added this ramp. And on my ramp, I'm just going to bypass it, change the type to vertical. Then I'm going to add another handle and turn it up to white. And now I can go down with it. And now it's like going to be like this part here, like this sort of gradient from black to white, is this part down here. Because it's set to vertical going up, right? And it's also set to multiply. So I'm just doing this to have the same margin at the bottom as I have in the top. And this is sort of just kind of a rough thing. You could go very exact here maybe by just adding 0.1, right? But yeah, it doesn't really matter that much. Okay, so I think we're all done here with the feedback loop. So now comes one of the crucial operators in this operation, which is the limit top. So on my limit, I'm going to go to quantize, change the quantize value to round, and then go up to 1 with my value step. So if I go back here and turn on the music, you can see this is already looking pretty interesting, right? You can see the lows on this end and then like going up to the highs there. And now if I were to change my gamma, you can see like the more gamma I add, the less sort of breaks there are in between. So lower the gamma. So yeah, this level here is really for the kind of input control. So use this to adapt the way the feedback loop behaves fitting to the track that you're using. Alright, so I'm going to bypass the sound, we don't need that for now. And we're going to be working with colors now. Cool, so to do that, I'm going to add a noise top. And on my noise, I'm going to change the RGB to just noise. We don't want this input in here. And on my common, I'm going to actually change it to 32-bit float RGBA. So this color part here is going to be in 32-bit float space instead of 8-bit fixed what we have here. Alright, so on my noise I'm going to change a few things. So first off, we want to animate this. So I'm going to type in ABS time dot seconds times point -3. No, minus 0.3, there we go. And I'm going to copy this parameter. And I'm going to paste that here and change that to like 0.05. So now it's moving down because the whole thing is kind of moving down. It's kind of the whole feeling of the artwork. So all the noises I kind of want to move down as well. And on my Z, I just add like a very slight change so you can see it. Otherwise, it just looks like it's dragging down. Makes it a bit more interesting. Alright, so on my noise tab here, I'm going to change the period to 4, the harmonics to 1, harmonic gain to 0.5, exponent to 0.7, amplitude to 0.2, and turn monochrome off. So these are all reference values. You don't have to use the exact same ones. So let's add a displace. And for the second input, I'm just going to copy this noise and adapt it. So first off, let's go to our transform and let's change it to minus 0.4 and then 0.06. And then I'm going to change the values here. So first off, I want a different seed, period 2, and amplitude 0.4, and we don't want to go down for exponent. All right, so let's put that into displacement. Already looking sort of interesting. The crucial part here is first off to change the extend to 0, right? So we're cutting off those parts or where the value is below 0 pretty much. We also want to change the displace weight, but not even that drastically, like 0.5 and 0.7. So this is already looking pretty cool. So before we move on and add some more things here, I want to already integrate that into my main artwork. So I'm going to add a composite. Can leave that as multiply and just put that in here. So now we have some transparency issues here, so we might want to add a transform at the very end here and change this to 1, like the alpha to 1, just turn background color on, like comp it. So now we have a nice black background and it's looking already quite interesting. So again, if we turn on sound, which is kind of crucial here, looking pretty cool. One thing that you might notice actually when we do turn on the sound, I'm just going to start it from here again, is that the audio reactivity isn't working that nicely. So if we turn off this displace, it totally works, you know, with the color as well, if you want to go the very simple minimalistic route. But I think this makes it even more interesting. But the thing is that we're cutting off parts like everywhere, right? Kind of cutting into the color or in the shapes. So to have the audio reactivity working nicely, we want to have to kind of protect this part up here so that is not affected by the displacement or like the cutting away. So to do that, what we can do is we can just add a rectangle, change the operation here to multiply, size X to 1, and justify vertical top. That's already something that we can work with nicely. Let's add, we can just copy this displacement here and use this as a first input. We don't need to displace it on the X, and we can go down to 0.2 here on the Y. Alright, so now we can add a comp here. Put that in here and change it to maximum. And now you can see this part up here is not affected by the displacement. So there's probably many ways to go about this, but this is just one I came up with, and I think it looks pretty nice and also kind of adds another layer here. Alright, so you can manipulate those colors even more, I mean pretty much endlessly, but one thing I'm just going to do, just kind of an easy way to manipulate them, is just to add a level and go to RGBA here. Might want to go down with the high G to like 0.5, already looking kind of more vapor wavy, right? We can go up with our red a bit, stronger red colors, and maybe go down high B to like 0.8. Can even go up with the red even more. Alright, so that's looking pretty nice. Let's just bypass the sound, we don't need that constantly going. One last thing we can do about the colors here is going with a limit, which is a really cool effect. Quantize the value here and maybe go up to like 0.3. Right, it's looking kind of interesting. So again, I want to go back to our cue point. Looking pretty cool and funky. I'm going to bypass this for now though. So the next step is that we might want to add some lines to this. So I'm going to use a select top. I'm going to use my limit here. Then I'm going to add an edge to this. And change my sample step to like 5. Might want to go up the strength to 10, just to be very clean here. And we have a nice outline now. So we might already want to integrate that here. So I'm just going to add that into the loop. But we don't want to set it to multiply, even though that also looks kind of cool. But I just want to set it to over. Actually, I don't know why it works that way. I guess it's because it's outside of the shape, but technically we should have to swap the operation order. Anyways, so make sure you've turned that on. And The thing is, now we have an outline of the entire shape, which is maybe something you want to go for, but I think it looks better if we both cut away parts, or most of the parts of the outline actually, and also displace it or like offset it. So first off, I'm going to add a noise here, our third noise. Change the RGB here to just noise. And then we want to go ahead and just paste the expressions here and here. So I might want to go down only by 0.2, and let's just change this to plus 0.3. It doesn't really matter. So this is looking good. So on my noise tab here, I'm going to change the period to 2, harmonics to 3, harmonic spread to 1.6, and the offset to like 0.3. And we're going to look at that in a second actually. So what I want to do here essentially is to achieve this. So you could just go down with the exponent and achieve the same thing I'm doing now, pretty much. But you're more in control when you just add a limit and then again change it to round, like the quantized value, and go up to 1. And now with the offset, we're in control of how much white or black you want to see. So I think 0.4 is actually kind of a good value here. And you're going to see what we're doing with that now. So I'm going to add another composite and add this as a second input. We can turn it around just so we're able to, just changing the order so I can bypass it nicely. You can already see as we're using this noise here, this limited noise, on the edge, we're cutting away parts of the noise. And I think that looks pretty cool. So you can see we have these sort of black lines as well, which I really don't want to have there. So on my noise, I've also got to go to output alpha noise. And now we only have our white lines. Cool. I've already quickly mentioned it. I want to offset them. So we want to add a displace here. On my displace, I'm going to change the displace weight to like 0.02 on both axes. And add yet another noise. Put that in here. It's going to look weird first. I'm going to change a few things. So first off, again, just noise. And then we want to animate this as well. So paste the expressions in here, and then just 0.1. And on our noise, it's kind of tedious work, but it's worth it. So 1.5 period. We don't need any harmonics, and yeah, that's basically it. Just want to have color. So always when you're working with displacement, you want to have color pretty much. So now with the amplitude, of course, now it's stopped again. So just let me quickly turn on the sound again. With the amplitude of our noise, we can determine how much we're offsetting the lines. I think 0.5 is a good value. Cool. Again, let me bypass the music. And last but not least, we want to add something before we just add some final post-processing touches. And that is those kind of circles or like dots that you saw. So for that, I'm going to add a circle top. And we want to make sure that our resolution here is at least as long or wide as the longer side of this. So in this case, 2000. So I might just want to go with like 2048 here. Whatever resolution you take, just make sure this one is a bit bigger than that longer side. All right, so I don't actually want to have a circle, but a triangle. I'm going to rotate that by 45 degrees, so it's like looking up like that. And I'm going to add a transform to it. And on my transform, I want to change the extend to repeat. And we want to go down with the scale. So I'm going to go down with the scale first to like 0.1 so you can nicely see what's happening. So right now, I don't really like the way they're, really it's just a normal grid. I kind of like to have them be kind of offset. That was not a good sentence. So I can change like the rotation to 45 degrees. So basically, originally it would look like this. So that's why I changed the rotation here to 45 as well. So they're looking up because that's what I'm going for. So now we have a nice offset grid of triangles here. But actually I want them to be even smaller. But let's look at that in a second. So I'm going to go to my noise 1 and use ty, copy this parameter again, and then go to my translation here and paste the reference this time. So now you can see they're like moving down the same speed as my noise here, which is, you know, not entirely necessary, but just something I like to do. Okay, and now we can go down further with our scale to like 0.015, and it's got to be the same on both axes, 0.015. So we've got a lot of triangles here now. So that's why, like, kind of, you know, if we were to have a very low, if we had a very low resolution here, it would look terrible. So that's why we have to go with a high resolution. I didn't go with the same resolution as here because it's got to be a square to work nicely here with the repetition. So what I can do now is add a composite, and I'm gonna just copy my limit here, change it to floor, and then put that in here. So now as fixed layer is set to input 2, we're nicely taking the resolution of this, which is the same as here. So, right, same resolution as here. So now we can add another comp here, and I'm just going to change the operation to add and put that in here. And then, of course, now the music stops again. We can see it's nicely just added to the mix, and it's in the right aspect ratio and resolution and everything. But if we wanted to go a bit lower, or like, you know, show a bit more of our triangles, we can go down a bit with this, but that's also going to change the opacity a bit. So if we go down, for example, to 0.8, we might want to add another limit here, and just make sure that we're changing this to ceiling at 1. It's going to be a bit like, just so we're making sure it's always the same brightness, so we can like change our floor nicely here. I think 0.9 is a good value here, so it's not too much, not too little. What's happening here? Could you not show me the fuck? Okay, it's just showing me an arrow. I hate that. There we go. Right, so let's go to the final touches of this. So first off, we might want to add another edge here. And you might have noticed, you might totally have not noticed, but I personally think these lines are a bit too thick, and also the triangles are a bit too large, but that's okay, because what we're going to do now is add another edge, change this to black, and turn comp over input on. So now you can see, if you look very closely, we're just adding outlines, like black outlines, and I think that gives it a really nice look. I often don't like the edge effect, but in some cases it's really cool. Might want to even go up with not the strength, but like the sample step to 1.5. It's subtle, but it makes a difference. Don't go too high with this though, because then at some point you're not going to be able to see the lines and especially the triangles that well anymore. Okay, another thing here is that we might want to add some anti-aliasing at the very end, just to make sure that we have a smooth edges. And also we might want to add a cross as well as an open color IO top, and put that into the second input here. I've got a whole video on that, check the description, but pretty much what this is pretty much is just a filter. So you can download a bunch of these LUTs, and I'm just going to use Arabica and change my cross to like 0.6. So you can see if I bypass it and unbypass it, there's quite a difference. It's subtle, but this just looks a lot better. So it's really just like a filter in Instagram or something. Cool. Might want to go back to turning on our limit here, and let's definitely add some music. So we're pretty much at the end here. So obviously you're very free to just take this as a base and go further with it. And let's just check what it's like by using the default song, which I really can't hear anymore. Yeah, you can mess around with the colors. You can use lookups here. You can manipulate the blurs, whatever. You know, there's many things you can mess around with. Especially look at the ramp and the level here. when you want to adapt this to the song that you're playing. So sometimes there's more, like less bass. And there's endless possibilities of what you can do with the outcome here in terms of post-processing. So feel free to mess around with this. Thanks a lot for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm sorry if I can't post that much recently. I'm in a very weird state of mind and still pretty sick, so I can't work that much. I hope that changes soon, and I'm very, very grateful for the continued support on Patreon. If you're not a Patreon yet, you can check out my Patreon page to see some extra content. Alright, so I'll guess I see you on the next video, and I'm looking forward to that. See you then.